A Soviet Union B-59 submarine in the Caribbean Sea, just a few kilometers away from America, was fully prepared to launch a submerged attack. At that moment, the U.S. Navy became aware and deployed small bombs into the water to bring the submarine to the surface. The Soviet submarine, thousands of kilometers away from its headquarters, had also lost contact with its headquarters. Its captain felt that war might have broken out, and it was now time to fire nuclear torpedoes. This was the time when tensions between the US and the Soviet Union had escalated beyond limits, and both countries had thousands of nuclear missiles within a press of a button. The captain of the Soviet submarine was about to press the nuclear missile button when suddenly something happened that saved the world from destruction once again. The incident appeared in Showcase Central videos, marking the history during those 12 days when America and the Soviet Union were on the verge of Cold War. It was a situation where the entire world had witnessed the side effects of nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II and had also seen the dangerous face of America. If anyone could challenge America's power, it was the Soviet Union, because shortly after World War II, the Soviet Union was the second country to successfully obtain nuclear technology. By conducting several nuclear tests, they indirectly signaled to America that they were not Japan, ready to sit quietly after attack. This was the era when the Cold War between America and the Soviet Union was underway. Both countries kept their nuclear weapons ready against each other at all times, whether by land, air, or sea. It was well known that if one of them initiated a nuclear attack, the next country would respond with nuclear missiles, and the devastation from these attacks would be far more terrifying than Japan's nuclear attacks. It was believed that 70% of the world's population could fall victim to them. To make these attacks even more effective, American and Soviet bomber aircraft were always in the air. Their nuclear submarines also lurked in international waters, waiting for each other, signaling with just a wait. Besides, America installed its nuclear weapons in Turkey and Italy because both countries were in NATO and were very close to the borders of the Soviet Union. This strengthened America's position because it would be easy to attack the western part of the Soviet Union from here. But when the news reached the Soviet Union, they also decided to install their nuclear weapons close to America. The best spot for this job was not anyone but Cuba, just 200 km southeast of America. At that time, Cuba had a pro-communist government that America was not digesting in any way. In America's view, Cuba was an ally of the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union was the real fortress of communism. Communism means that all businesses will remain under government control, and everyone will get an equal share, meaning no classes like rich or poor can be formed. While America wanted a capitalist system to run all over the world, where anyone could do business and generate their profit. America wanted to attack Cuba by attacking America and bringing the capitalist system there too. But Cuban President Fidel Castro had the support of the Soviet Union, which supplied weapons to Cuba. But the Soviet Union was thinking differently from Cuba's friendly relationship. At that time, Soviet President Nikita Khrushchev made a secret deal with Cuban President Fidel Castro, in which it was decided that the Soviet Union would install its intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, in Cuba, and in return, it would also save Cuba from America's attack. But the other advantage of this was that now the Soviet nuclear warheads could easily hit the South American region. No one came to know about this deal, and in top-secret style, the Soviet ICBMs started installing on various locations in Cuba. But this news had spread across America as a rumor, and spread fear among people. And it was believed during the 1962 state election campaign that all these news were unfounded. But in search of the truth, the U.S. Air Force used its U-2 spy planes. The spy plane captured images above the island of Cuba, clearly capturing the medium-range R-12 and intermediate-range R-14 ballistic missile facility. These photographs were enough to prove that the Soviet Union had surrounded the southeastern part of America. This news fell like a bolt of lightning on American President John F. Kennedy, and he decided to teach a lesson to Cuba. There, he decided to airstrike a plan. The plan was to destroy the Soviet ICBM first by airstrikes and then capture Cuba with full force, which was already due to American president's plan to declare World War III was considered, because the attack on Soviet missiles in Cuba considered the possibility of attack on the Soviet Union, and if this happened, a nuclear war would break out from both sides, which would not be in anyone's control. On the other hand, when the Soviet Union learned of America's intentions, they tightened their belts to respond to the attack. In this preparation, a Soviet B-59 nuclear submarine was also mentioned at the beginning of this video. It was ordered to remain hidden in the depths of the Caribbean Sea near Cuba. The submarine crew had full authority to launch a nuclear torpedo missile in case of war. There was no need to take permission from Moscow. It was hidden from the U.S. Navy to be so deep in the water of the Caribbean that its radio contact with Moscow had also broken. The U.S. Navy also suspected the Soviet submarine to be in the Caribbean. They threw small bombs in that location and signaled the submarine to come up and identify itself. These bombs were actually signal depth charges, anti-submarine warfare. They threw small bombs at that location, signaling the submarine to surface and identify itself. These bombs, thrown by the U.S. Navy, were actually signal depth charges. This anti-submarine weapon, if exploded nearby, could destroy the entire submarine. Inside B-59, whose contact with Moscow had already been lost, the captain understood that perhaps war had broken out, and it was time to fire nuclear torpedoes. Full authority was with the crew, but it was crucial to obtain the concurrence of all 3 officers on board before pressing the nuclear button. A heated debate ensued among the executive officer Vasily Arkhipov and others in the archipelago, where Vasily argued that firing nuclear missiles was very risky, especially without confirmation of war starting. After several minutes of debate, it was decided to bring B-59 to the surface and re-establish contact with Moscow first, to better assess the actual situation. Meanwhile, tension was rising, and a meeting between the Russian and American presidents was held to resolve it. It was agreed that the Soviet Union would withdraw its nuclear missiles from Cuba, but only if America did not seize Cuba later. This deal, known publicly as the Cuban Missile Crisis, escalated tensions so much over those 12 days that both countries sent their nuclear missiles into space. Meaning if we survived and war did not start, these missiles would be destroyed in space. When B-59 surfaced in the Caribbean, they contacted Moscow, where they were ordered to return to the Soviet Union. History believes that Executive Officer Vasily Arkhipov is the person who saved the world today because of his timely decision. Otherwise, nuclear war would have been so severe that perhaps humanity would not have had a name. Hope you will like and share this video abundantly. Thank you very much for your love-filled comments. See you in the next amazing video.